Cool. My name's Sam Kirk. I'm here to talk to you about this film called Furore, which is Latin for fierce. Not relevant. Furore tells the story of a young man and his lust for adventure. He's this guy called Peter. He's born in the 30th century. The world's kind of fucked to shit. Multiple disasters happened. I kind of just let us say that Earth is basically a desert planet now. So he wants to go off into space, go off into bigger and better things. But he was born into a poor family. He's just had to labour all his life. He can't get inducted into academies because that's just not how this world works. So he takes the easy route. One time he's in a bar on Earth and there's a bunch of smugglers there, a bunch of ne'er-do-wells. Barman gives him a tip, he goes over and he joins their crew. One issue, he's terrible at everything. He's not skilled at all. He can't go in as an engineer, or as a technician, or as a pilot. But it's fine, they don't need that anyway. They just want to cook. He can't do that either. But he tells them he can, and that's fine. He goes into space and everything's kind of fine until a disaster strikes, making him the only survivor of the crew. I kind of imagine Peter as someone who's sort of an everyday man. He's someone I think anyone of us can relate to. He's someone who has ambitions in high places, but it's difficult for him to get anywhere because of his upbringing, because of his skills, things like this. So the story picks up with him trying to fix something on the ship. That turns out to be an onboard camera. He's been working on it for weeks. It's the only thing he's managed to get working, so he starts to document what's happened to him. He tells the story of how he got onto the ship all the way up to the disaster. Now, the disaster is kind of a mystery. It's something that I want people to sort of think about and wonder what it could possibly be. I've got an excerpt from my script, eventually, about the disaster itself. Maybe in your questioning, you can come with ideas of your own. Sounds of metal scraping against metal that sound almost animalistic echo through the ship. Bangs and screams continue and get closer. A body flies through the cafeteria doors and takes out two people still sitting at a table. Chaos ensues, people running in every direction. Peter, panicked, doesn't notice when a body flies through the glass of the counter right at him. The body flings him back into the wall behind him. Peter stumbles back to his feet, but doesn't notice a serving cart that's wheeling towards him. One wheel of the serving cart catches the corner of the oven as a huge bang is heard. Whatever just happened tilted the ship and sends the serving cart hurtling through the air towards Peter. The cart hits him in the chest, sending him backwards into the refrigerator room. His back slams against the wall. He sits there for less than a second, dazed and confused, until the serving cart rolls towards him again. The refrigerator door closes just before the cart hits Peter straight on the forehead. The back of his head smacks against the wall with a gut-wrenching crack. Then blank. He doesn't really know what's happened. He can only inform as much as he gets there. He also lets us know that the ship is collapsing. Nothing's working. He can't call for rescue. But he's got enough food to last maybe 70, 80 years. But that's when things start to get to him. He starts to think, I'm alone in deep space. I can live an entire human life, but what am I doing? Like I wanted to go to space, but now I'm here, and it's just kind of black, and it's nothing, and it's lonely. He starts to wonder what's going on. And then the ship computer announces, we're losing the deck that leads to food storage. Now that's not catastrophic. He can find ways around it. But he panics and he runs after it. And the ship begins emergency lockdown procedures and shuts him in a corridor. He's got two doors and an airlock behind him. He's got to make a choice then. He starts to think about it long and hard, and he thinks, all my life I thought my ambitions were out here in space. I thought life would just kind of happen to me if I got here, and it turns out it's worse than when I was on Earth. He starts to make decisions about what life means to a person and how you should best use it. And thinks, I'm not going to live my life just trapped on a ship forever. I'm going to go up there and just see what happens. He doesn't really care how long he's out there, so he takes a spacesuit. He looks at the majesty of space and he decides, do you know what, I did it. This is pretty sweet. And he starts to take his helmet off. But because this is the look of someone who has no look at all, someone who decides, hey, I'm at the end of all things here, and you know what, it was fine, it was great. In the distance, far from the distance, you might not spot it, there's a ship that could potentially rescue him. Now, for Peter himself, I thought, I kind of want someone with charm, someone with pizzazz, someone who's kind of scraggly and scruffy but very handsome, but also is a general sort of funny guy. That's how I see him. And the world itself is what I like to call sort of dirty sci-fi. It's not necessarily dystopian as it is just sort of messed up. The world's kind of a desert, ships are all industrial, it's not Star Trek, it's close to just being a western with spaceships, Firefly, Alien, Dead Space, things like this, that all just inspire the general sort of theme of the entire universe. Red Dwarf, which, I mean, admittedly a comedy, actually ended up being a bigger inspiration than I thought it would be, because that is a show about someone who gets put into suspended animation on a ship, wakes up, 3 million years later, the entire crew is dead, but he was just someone who used to fix the vending machines. What the hell is he going to do? It's that sort of thing that sort of inspired the entire look and feel and everything. And the themes of man versus world, man versus himself, and death is part of life. It's someone who, the world's been against him because the world's gone to shit. And he was just born in the wrong place. So he's constantly fighting his entire life to just get wherever he wants to be. He doesn't fully know where that is. He's fighting against himself because he's constantly fighting about survival, about his life. Is it worth him continuing on this if he's just on a wrecked ship forever? And Death's part of life is fairly obvious based on the decision he makes at the end. The issues that could come up is, camera-wise, it's something that I've got some flashbacks in here, and I want flashbacks to be shot fairly traditionally. But the present day stuff, him documenting everything that's happened, I kind of want it to be done by on-ship CCTV or any cameras he's fixed. But I feel like that could cause potential issue just because in the scene where the ship collapses and he panics and runs off, I don't know how feasible it is just to have rows and rows of CCTV just so you can get every shot. That's something I'll figure out. Conveyance is something I had an issue with writing the script. It's something I'm following through. The problem is I know the story very well. So when you're writing all the descriptions and things, I tend to miss elements, which is an issue. And because it's almost entirely a one-man thing, the whole film may as well be a monologue, which can get very tedious. So I'm trying to cut that right now. And so does anyone have any questions about this?
How many speaking characters would there be overall?
Overall, there is 2 crew members on the ship as part of a pre-disaster flashback. There's 1 crew member in a bar, there's a bartender, and then there's Peter. So it's a 5-person show, but...
What about the ship?
The ship computer also has a voice. So it's a 6-character film, but most of the dialogue is done by Peter. Everyone else, I'd say the ship probably has the most dialogue next to him, and even that's maybe 11 lines.
How do you plan on filming the actual disaster?
Well, I've tried to. The way I've got around this is because I realise it's a kind of big deal. I'm trying to make a disaster that destroyed an entire spaceship, but because Peter's telling the story, I want to keep that very close to him. The actual room where it happens is it's like a cafeteria room essentially, so the camera would stay very close to him and it would be mostly sound. Like, the visuals aren't necessarily the most important thing, it's the sound assets that I want to be like really kind of weird and all over the place, but high quality to get across what's going on. Good. Yes.
How would you do the last scene?
The very last scene.
Yeah.
It would be mostly green screen. It's a tough one. Like, budgetary reasons, it is the hardest one. One thing that I kind of influenced it is I've seen behind the scenes shots of the only one that comes to memory. There's more than this, but the one that I've actually seen the behind the scenes of is from an episode of Doctor Who, where they had to get a shot from outside a spaceship. So to get the actor floating, they filmed them in a fish tank, and then they intercut that with green screen effects of space and whatnot. it would be an expensive deal for such a small shop, but I think it would be probably good looking. So fish tank green screen. Yes.
How feasible and how much do you think this would actually cost?
Too much for this college.
So it's not something that we could possibly make here.
It's tough. Like aesthetically, it's a tough one because.
Is
Like
there a way to make this, like, to change some stuff so that it is possible to make?
Well, yeah. Like if I go back to the very first. Oh no. Here. Alien, for example, was done. I mean, obviously on a bigger budget than we've got here, but on a comparatively smaller budget to other films. My original idea for the aesthetic of the ship is something akin to like the Dead Space cockpits, things like this. Everything's kind of clunky and messy, but it's filled, it's packed, it's still clearly high tech. That could easily be changed to something akin to the Nostromo, which is, especially today, much easier and much cheaper to produce. I think we're done. That's a wrap, everybody.